Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today, our guest from North Carolina is Roy Turner, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, Executive Director of the North Carolina Athletic Directors Association. Welcome to the podcast, Roy.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate having the opportunity to come in and share my journey, and more importantly, to say thank you on behalf of all of the administrators, NASI certified, and our entire family and network across the U.S. and the world now for making this podcast available and sharing these best practices and best ideas with everyone.
Well, thank you. You're too kind. Let's have you start by sharing with our audience here in Utah and across the nation where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, those types of things.
Well, I grew up in Greensboro, Mark. I purchased a curb market when I was 5 years old. So when I looked at my first job, I was actually in customer service when I was a young kid. We started, my dad we sold tires. We sold anything my dad could actually make money. So again, it was a great opportunity for me to understand that relationship building process, what we build on today in athletic administration and leadership and just interacting with people and so forth. Had an opportunity then in 1971, first during the integration, to be moved to a predominantly Black high school in Greensboro, James B. Dudley High School. It was probably one of the best experiences of my life. And it really, I think it helped me prepare me for the world that we live in today. Met some coaches there that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And then had an opportunity after graduation in 74 to go to East Carolina. And then, as I will get back and discuss a little bit later, in the podcast, is met my lifetime sweetheart there. We both bleed purple. We're both diehard East Carolina Pirates, and I got two wonderful kids to show for that. So I hope I have an opportunity to share a little bit, talk about them a little bit later on.
I'm sure you will. Let's talk about your athletic path, youth sports, what you played in high school, those type of things.
Yeah, again, with the commitment to the store, I did play junior high baseball. I was fortunate to play all 3 years of junior high baseball and also played 3 years of high school baseball. But I was just an average athlete. I've heard Jake Von Sheer say this before. If it wasn't for talent and genetics, I'd be playing pro ball. But I'm not playing pro ball, and people pay not to see me play ball. The quote used to be, hit it to me. And basically I'd ask people and they said they were hoping they didn't hit it to you. So I was just an average player, but I loved coaching and I loved being part of something bigger and being part of a team. So when I got to East Carolina, one of the things I had an opportunity to do was to be an undergraduate baseball coach with Monty Little Halberd, Gary Overton, and Tony Guzzo. And what a great experience that was. So then when I got out into got my first job in 1979, started coaching, and I coached about 4 or 5 different sports. So just an average high school athlete who had tremendous opportunities, and hopefully I took advantage of those. And each one of those seemed to parlay a little bit more on another level every time, and gave me a little bit different platform. And just like we're going to talk about with leadership, all those things gave me this opportunity and gave me a little bit of experience that I could learn upon and build upon.
Let me ask just to follow up. You said your first job was in 1979. Coincidentally, that was my first job. Well, and of course I stayed there for 34 years, but that then puts you in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the aughts and the teens. So a 5-decade man. So that's another thing that we have in common.
Yeah, well, it's and I'm hoping you're not going to bring all the things we have in common up tonight. Yeah. That is pretty cool when you think about that, and then we've seen so much change during that period of time, Mark, as we both know. But how the world has changed and how sports have changed, the money that's in it today, the challenges that we have, and all those things. But having that opportunity and coming out of school and getting that first opportunity again, mine was different. every one of mine were stepping stones as I went through, because I started in a junior high school, had to coach football. And even though I didn't play high school football, I was big enough, but my dad wouldn't let me play. So I had to coach football to get my job, to have an opportunity to teach out the physical education. And so it became a great opportunity for me.
Well, I got news for you. If you taught in a junior high school, because I student taught in a junior high school, if you taught in a junior high school, as far as I'm concerned, you have a one-way ticket to heaven. Yeah. Because
that was challenging. We were talking about, the job opportunities that came from that. After my second year, I reached out to Rick Jones at Elon University and asked him if I could work his baseball camps. He said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm a junior high baseball coach and football coach and athletic director at Southeast Guilford Junior High in Greensboro." And he said, "Wonderful, you're my camp director for junior high." And he literally, for the next 6 summers with him before he left to go to Tulane, I was his camp coordinator. So that, having that experience and having that background actually, again, gave me another opportunity and create another network for me.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Let's have you talk for a moment about the mentors in your life, teachers, parents, coaches, bosses that had a big influence on you. I know we'll wait for the biggest mentor, because I know what you're going to say there, but we'll put that a little bit later. So.
I'll have to back up the screen a little bit when I get to Jerry, but my eyes might start to sweat a little bit as I talk about these. But obviously my parents, just tremendous work ethic. I saw them work. As I said, at the store, we were 365, 24. We didn't go 24/7, but we opened at 10 a.m. in the morning and closed at 10 p.m. at night. So I just saw that grind ability, and then relationship building piece of that, and then finding a way with a limited amount of resources to make things work. So that started there. Have a brother, an older sister and a younger brother. And, we sort of fed off of each other a little bit. Even today, we talked to both of them today. Then got in, as I said, got an opportunity in junior high to play. Had a couple influential teachers and coaches at that time. But when I got to high school was really where the impact occurred. And I met a guy, Coach Bill Boyers. And anybody here that's talking about this knows about Greensboro, knows about Coach Boyers. And just a presence of a man, but more importantly, very convicted. Once you had a friend in him, he never forgot about you. He kept up with us the entire time. Left from Dudley, as I said, went to East Carolina. I met Jimmy Grimsley. Jimmy Grimsley, as you know, was like a couple other people. I'm gonna mention some names because I'm gonna leave some people out, and I'd be remiss to do that. But Jimmy had the same capacity that Charlie Adams and Mary McGee had, that they could remember every single person's names that they'd ever met in their entire life. And wow. It was a tremendous experience to see them and hear them talk and do things. But Dr. Grimsley did that, gave me that opportunity. And then again, coming out of school, getting involved with Dick Knox, and then Charlie Adams, executive director and commissioner of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. And then obviously the biggest one of all of them was Jerry McGee, the executive director of the North Carolina Athletic Director, an icon and legend across the United States, and trailblazer. And again, just probably the first vision caster that I'd ever met in my life, who could see farther, see it sooner, see more, and also create a picture for everybody else of where we wanted to go. And he was able to plant that seed in just about every person, as you know. You served on the board with him. So, and then obviously I would have to say Rusty Lee, because Rusty Lee got me involved with the UIAAA, got me involved with our state association, pulled me into the publications committee, which then springboarded into the board. And then I would have to say, if I say mentors, then I start mentioning names for UIAAA, including yourself, obviously Mike and Bruce and Phil, but our entire national family and network, as you know, and it's extensive for the ones of us who've been in this for a while, have all poured into me, challenged me, been a sounding board, been an idea exchanger, and helped me, because everybody knows me, knows that I will take a good idea and make it my own and use it in a heartbeat. And I also know, and I'm not really smart enough to come up with some of these ideas on my own. So I had an awful lot of people like yourself who shared those. And so I'm appreciative of that. So and with that being said, thank you for investing in me.
Well, let me follow up, because you mentioned the NIAAA family across the U.S. And I know I've asked this of some other ADs, But I want you to dwell on that for a minute, because a lot of our listeners have not experienced that yet. And I'm hoping to get them to experience that. So talk about the uniqueness of the NIAAA family, because when I explain it to people, they just look at you like, yeah, that's not really true. And I said, well, yeah, it is. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, again, I go back to my start, and and again, I remember just when I first going to a national conference. Jerry asked me to go to a national conference, help Rusty with leadership training. I went down to Orlando, and I took 6 leadership training courses, Mark, over 3 days. And I met Jim Teff and Jim Watkins and Don Bales and then Mike and Bruce, and the teachers and stuff that were in there. And I volunteered in that class to be a facilitator for Deb Von Kuyken and current issues. And I got a call from Jim Teff about 2 weeks later after the conference was over and said, Deb is stepping down. We need a national chair, and you're in that. And I realized right then, everybody was sorting this together, and you could call anybody. I called Dave Hoke, Doc, right. and then the people that were on the publications, because again, I was on publications when I walked into this. Again, and these are some icons in this business. But Mike Blackburn was on publications. Dr. Olson was on publications.
Probably Craig Perry too.
Yeah, Craig Perry.
Yeah.
Tim Graham, Glenn Gillespie, John Evers.
That's a who's who right there.
I mean, it was just a tremendous opportunity, and it just built upon that. Then going to get, after you start coming to the conferences, as you can see, and I tell anybody, you watch these videos online and you see the people greeting each other with the high fives and the hugs and everything else. We get back together, and it is a family. The people's eyes sweat. People get emotional. People are excited. When people get recognized, you can see it's just like somebody from their family just got that recognition. The people coming up in pictures and so forth, and you see the stuff in social media. So it's genuine. It's people care about each other, but more importantly, it's just fun and energetic to be around the people that are exchanging ideas. And more importantly, as we all know, these are the 50-foot people. These are the people closest to the situation, the problems. And these are the people who have solutions. They have solutions for problems we don't even know exist yet, and they share them with each other. And that's a beautiful thing I enjoy about the national conferences. I know that's something we'll talk about a little bit later, but that's the real reason that even now that I'm no longer in a school building, but it's still the highlight of my year is to get to the national conference, to get my state conference, and also get to the national conference and network and reconnect with everyone.
Well, that's well said. Thank you so much for sharing. Let me get another comment off track that's not on the list. So let's talk about your sweet bride, Rhonda, and talk about how that romance happened at ECU.
Oh, well, I was a Kappa Sig and she was an AL Pi, and they had a house mother, and they got meals cooked for them every day. So they had lunch and dinner served. Well, they called it fraternity house. Actually, my older brother was the person that was actually doing it, and he needed somebody to help him do it. And so anyway, this is my story. Now, Rhonda would give you one a little different, but yeah. So we met in 1975, spring of 75, and as soon as I saw her, I knew I was in love. I mean, it was just one of those really weird type of things. But I noticed that she started paying a little attention too, because I didn't think she was actually from LaGrange, Chicago, but she drank sweet tea. So she would ring this little bell. They would ring bell. We would come out. We would pour in some more tea, and we'd clean things up. And we just started talking and so forth. And so, as I said, she's my better half in every possible way that you can think of. And we came from there. And like I said, we've been season ticket holders since 1980. But it's been, as you know, with Deborah and us getting together, she's excited too. And that's the other part of that. We talk about the family, and it's not just the active administrators, it's the spouses of the active administrators. Everybody looks forward to just sort of getting back together and spending some quality time together. And I can assure right now, everybody that's part of this has got Nashville circled already.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk for a minute, Roy. You've been an AD for years and years, decades. How is the job different today than it was when you first started? And of course, leave out the obvious answer of COVID, because that was a mess for everybody. But talk about the changes over the years.
Well, I think, again, there are a number of I call them obstacles that turn into opportunities for us in this business and leadership, as you know, Mark. But obviously the biggest one is finding coaches, and then the high maintenance parents. And I will tell you this, I have noticed is the kids are not an awful lot different. I had, as you know, and I'll share this. I retired from active administration in 2015. I got a phone call when I was at the NEBC conference in South Dakota, and was offered a job to come back into a school building. And I was at Hoggard High School first semester. And then just seeing again, just coming out in 15, going back in 21, and seeing the difference in the kids. It was not an appreciable difference, but the fact that parents were just completely, wanted to clear all the obstacles and, take everything away. And then more importantly, my other aspect of this that I do is with working with officials and seeing the conduct and the behavior in the gymnasiums, and now trying to have them, and now how that is affects those officials. So I think again, the biggest changes I've seen is, and one of the biggest ones, and I didn't mention this one yet, is availability of professional opportunities for personal growth and professional development. Those are things that, we didn't have those when we started. Unless we went to the national conference, it was the only way we were going to get information. And when we got a magazine article, it was about 6 months old already. Now with all of the different information that we have available to us, these podcasts, Zoom calls, we got webinars all over the place. We got everything going on, blogs that are being posted, articles are being written every day and posted out. There's just so much information available to us. So the job is constantly standing. And that's why, again, we need to be lifelong learners. We need to continue to grow and learn and get better and challenge ourselves every day. And understand that yesterday, that what we learned yesterday is not significant unless we take some different action today with what we've learned. So I think a biggest part is just the availability of coaches, expectations, and then more importantly, the parents are just completely, I don't have an answer for that one on the parents, but I'm working on it.
Allow me another follow-up that's not on the list that I sent you, because you work with officials. I will speak for Utah. 49% of the ejections of kids from sports over all 20 sports in the state of Utah for the entire year came from boys soccer. And I want to know, in North Carolina, is it the same type, or do you have that problem there, or is it just a Utah thing?
It's higher in soccer than any other sport, but it's not 49%. We're not looking at, a 50-50 all of the other. Probably soccer is probably 35%. One thing about soccer, though, that makes that sport, I think, unique, Mark, is those same kids work with those officials on the weekends in their youth leagues and so forth, and they come out to the ball games. You ever notice that they're calling them by their first name? And sometimes that we miss that respect piece of that. And that becomes a contentious for someone who is allowed that to happen. But the biggest thing we have, if I just did a little survey and you would talk about numbers, so I'm just going to give you a couple of statistics I got from the officials. I only had about 79 of my 160 officials, so about 50%, but that makes it probably a valid sampling. I asked him why, if conditions continue to worsen, what would be the number one reason you would leave the profession? And number one was the fans' behavior. Number two was coaches' behavior. And number three was players' behavior. Number four was pay. So again, I think that gives us on a national level. I know Carissa's doing a lot of stuff with the National Federation to try to adjust that. And I know that we'll have some workshops in Nashville on dealing with this ourselves. But this is going to really be a challenging situation for us moving forward, because we're still across the nation right now, even in registrations from the last numbers I saw on NASA, down about 30% as we start preparing for the fall sports season. And that doesn't bode well for us, because you and I both know none of us got in this business to limit or to restrict the number of game speed opportunities that kids have.
Absolutely.
To learn life lessons.
All right. Well, thanks for allowing me to go off track for a minute. I want you to talk more specifically now. I know you mentioned some generalities, but talk about your journey with the NCAA and then, of course, the NIAAA in more detail than you did earlier. You talked about how Rusty got you involved, but let's delve into that a little bit.
Yeah. So again, I came on my first AD job was 1992. I was offered that position at Dudley, and I gladly accepted, and best decision I ever made. And then in 97, I started coming going to all of our state conferences. And again, I got to go back to Jerry, because you know this, and Jerry was the master at this. Rusty was on the executive board. He was the president at that year. And we were up in Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina. I was outside waiting. Rusty and I rode together from Greensboro, and I was outside waiting for Rusty to finish up a post-conference board meeting, and just a sort of a, decompressing type thing, what worked well, what did not. And Jerry goes, "Roy, come on in here. You got some ideas, and share these with the board." So I was not even a board member, and he gave me a seat at the table because he felt like, all right, you maybe have something to do here. So, when he finally asked me, he said, I need you to take some of these leadership training courses in 2000 and help Rusty with leadership training. I said, absolutely. And so, I went down, like I said, to Orlando, and then that later that year, they offered me the coordinator with Rusty. And now the last 20 years, I've been involved with that and had an opportunity to be a contributor on a number of classes. I think I've taught about, I think I've taken 45. I think I've taught about 35 different courses in North Carolina. National faculty now for the last 15 or 18 years. So I've been truly blessed to be able to get to that opportunity. But when I got involved with the NCAA, that was the other thing. And then Jerry said, I need some help with the conference. And that's our event. That's just like everybody, just like the national event. There's everything else. There's the day-to-day operations, but the national conference, the state conference for all of us is a highlight of the year for most of our ADs. And so we started working there, and I started helping Jerry with that in 95, and I'm still doing that today. So it was great. It's been just a tremendous opportunity to work with some great leaders. I mean, Darren Coe now and Fred McDaniel. I mean, I'd start naming people. I'm gonna leave some people out, but I mean, it's just been an absolute blessing. And then more importantly, it was one person who just said, hey, get more involved and see if you can make a difference. And I hope I have, and I appreciate the opportunity, but that's my challenge every day is, and again, this goes back to coaching and geek, but take your talents, be the best you can be, get better every day in every way. And then more importantly, bring out the best in others. And so I hope that's something we continue to build upon.
Thank you. Help me with my memory here, Roy. I want to say, and I believe this is correct, you were in with me and probably Craig Perry, and I want to say, I know Dr. John, but the first, before 799 was a course. We met in January. We came in just 6 of us, and then met with Dr. John, and then eventually became the 799, eventually became a QPA. And so that thought just crossed my mind. And so that's another feather in your cap. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun. Actually, that challenged me, Mark, to learn Excel, because you remember we had that extensive rubric where you would put the information. It would say which of the 3 levels you had qualified to. So yeah, that was absolutely great. I got to give you a really quick Dr. John story because we're on a real tight time. But I actually taught that same year. I got to teach a class. I was doing a workshop. I think that was in San Diego, if I remember correctly. We were working on that, and I may not be correct, but I know it was San Diego where I was teaching. I was teaching this workshop, and I'd already worked with Dr. Olson, as I said, through publications. Well, I got ready and to do my publication. And Dr. Olson, about 1 minute before the workshop started, walked in and sat on the front row right in front of the podium. And it took me about 5 minutes to get where I could get my voice back and everything and talk. And like Dr. Olson's actually listening to a workshop that I'm presenting, like I'm literally going to be able to teach him something here in this situation.
Well, Dr. John was, he could command that respect, and when he was in the room, making no mistake, everybody knew. And of course, he affected so many lives. So that is a great story. And speaking of stories, let's have you share some more stories from some of the successes you've had as, of course, before you were executive director, as a coordinator, LTI coordinator in the state of North Carolina, and some of the successes you've had from there.
Well, I would say there's successes, and there's successes only because of the people, the growth that you've seen of the people that you've worked with, Mark. And I think that's it. And I just finished reading, brain dead here, The Hero Effect. And here's a guy that spoke to us at the national conference. And he basically said really quickly, and just give you a story. He said, if you take an apple and you cut it in half, you can count the number of seeds. But if you plant an apple, you will never know how many apples come from that apple. And I think, again, when I start looking back on my career in this, and the people who poured into me, the people who invested in me, I think that's it. I think, as we start looking at that growth process, you came in, you took a class, and you know how this process works. But for the people who don't, once you take a class and you take 790, you can now come back and teach that class. And then that class turns into another class. And then more importantly, you have people here. I did this a couple of years ago, and I just wanted the people here on this call. If you want to find out if you're really making a difference in the influence or the impact that you've had on the lives of people, the next time you're in a session, have somebody stand up and say, something. If Mark Hunter has had impact on your life, please stand. And you'll get 2/3 of the people in the room, probably. I would say that in your time. Maybe you get 90%. But if somebody else is standing because of that, so the bottom line is we are all going to affect change. We're all going to leave a legacy, and we get to choose whether or not it's positive. If we're going to leave one, why not just, like I said, just don't do anything ordinary. Be extraordinary in everything that you're doing. And I've had so many opportunities to do that. Like I said, through Jerry, through Rusty, working with the NCAA, and then having the opportunity to be on this platform, as I said, with the NIAAA, and then the leadership training courses, as a contributor, as a teacher, and then more importantly, what we do with the state coordinators meeting is, every September we get to find out all the current issues that are going on around the U.S., workshop topics, opportunity to network and exchange of ideas with people. So I've just been blessed as far as that's concerned.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's have you talk for a moment about your time on the NIAAA board. I know you served 3 years. I served a little bit before you, and there's not everybody that gets to serve on that board. So talk about the uniqueness and talk about what a blessing that is in your life and the effect it can have on your athletic director community in your state and nationally.
Yeah, Mark, I think, again, when I look at this, and I'm only one of 2 people from North Carolina in the history of the NIAAA, which is if I'm correct, this is our 49th year.
Yeah.
So in 49 years, there's only been 2 people representing North Carolina. Jerry was on the board representing the NEDC. So Don Patrick is the only other person from North Carolina that's ever represented here. So again, huge shoes to fill to step into that. But it was a great opportunity. And then all of the different people from all of the different regions, and we did the at-large, towards the end of our terms. But again, like I said, working with Phil, working with Mike, working with Bruce, working with Rich, Annette. I mean, I go through the entire table as we went around, and
right.
I still remember everybody, and everybody's assigned seats. But the fact that, like you said, you were getting national information, you were getting current news, current issues, current ideas, and you were able to take those and immediately bring those back and implement those in our states. I would just challenge anybody here, if you have an opportunity, even an at-large candidate in one of our 4 at-large elections now, take advantage of that and get a seat at that table. And not only that, I just think you become a better person. I'm not sure how much more equipped I was, but I know I'm a better person because I hung around people who are a lot smarter than me for those 3 years.
Thank you. Share with our audience your contributions to professional development a little bit more in detail. And I want you to obviously talk about, because you have won the Kovaleski Professional Development Award, and that's obviously Dr. John won the first one, but that's not an award that comes to everybody. And so I know I'm asking you to talk about yourself, but you're a big dog around the nation. When you talk about professional development, everybody knows who Roy Turner is. So speak to that for a moment. Well,
again, I hope I did it the right way. And the opportunities I've had since then, Mark, I hope that I have anyway. I'll tell you one thing that I will say, as far as when you're talking about the Frank Kovaleski, I don't care what we do in life, peer recognition is the ultimate reward, even though none of us ever seek that when we start out.
Right.
But, and like in mine, I've been fortunate enough to be associated with Charlie Adams, with Jerry McGee, with Bruce Whitehead, Mike Blackburn, and then now, John Kovaleski. And again, I was fortunate enough to get the Jim Teff Award, as you know, from our state coordinators.
Right.
And when you put somebody's name on something, and they were your mentor, or they were somebody that they were your role model, somebody you wanted to be like when you grew up, it just makes it even more special when you get that opportunity. So, when you talk about professional development, I think, again, a big part of that is, the big part for me is reflective experience. And we've talked a lot about that, but, it's continuing to, as I said, grow and learn. It's continuing to exchange ideas. It's continuing to read. You and I know this. It's that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. You got to keep finding something out there that keeps moving the needles, that keeps you challenges. And somebody asked me, why did I go back in the fall? I said, because there's things out there in the world that are keeping me awake at night, but those things also wake me up in the morning. And that means that I have another opportunity to possibly affect change if I go embrace that. So, with the professional development, again, as I will embark, and this is actually, I'm not announcing my retirement, but it's time for me to step aside and let somebody else. So I've recruited Darren Coe, and Darren's going to take over as state coordinator for North Carolina. So this will be my 20th consecutive year. And Lord willing, I make it to September, and I'll be there. And actually, I got all of those connections, and that family is going to be very special. And it's going to, like you said, me pretty well. I'll get emotional sometimes, but that's the people that we've met. That's the most important thing. Not necessarily all these awards. Hopefully, the difference that you made in people's lives that you've served is what we all want. All of us aspire to do.
All right, let's circle back now. And I mentioned this earlier, but now we're going to talk more extensively about the famous Jerry McGee from North Carolina, obviously one of my mentors as an executive director, and before that. And of course, Jerry just had that drawl and that kindness that he'd ask you to do something, and I'm not sure how you could ever tell him no. But in your case, I mean, I was the first and only executive director in Utah still after all these years. So you were a second generation executive director, but it's like being Gene Barstow and trying to follow John Wooden. You had to follow Jerry McGee. So talk about that, because Jerry is a legend. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, well, obviously I knew when I was working with Jerry, again, that's, I knew that when he gave me the opportunity to walk alongside him, I knew I was this little bitty fly on the back of an elephant. And I was okay with that. I was just, because I was in the room because I walked in with Jerry McGee. And then I became a quick study. I learned very quickly that you need to learn as much as you can from people that you associate with. And I was fortunate to do that. He saw something in me. He continued to give me opportunities and give me a little bit more responsibility. And then I hope it was a natural progression. But he put so many things in place, Mark, as you know, across the nation with the national executive directors, with the sponsorships programs and all the different things he was doing. And you remember when he got 6 other people together and created the NEDC, those 7 guys came together and said, we're doing some great stuff in our state. We need to start getting together at least once a year and have an opportunity to sounding board and exchange of ideas, very similar to what we were already doing. And, he did that with us with our summer leadership in North Carolina. But just, I knew that I was not going to be able to be Jerry McGee. I literally had my son do this, as you know, and again, I'll hopefully get a chance to talk about it. We've got some time afterwards, but he's into photography. So I told him, I said, do me a favor. I want you to take a picture of me, and I want you to put me in these massive shoes. So he took me, and I was like, I was like this big, and the shoes were like this long. And we put this slide up there when they introduced me. And I said, here I am. Now, those are the shoes I have to fill. But then I showed, and then I had to take a picture of me with just my shoes on, my Ectos on. And I said, but these are the shoes I've got. So I've got to be grounded in what I can do. And I knew I had to do that. I had to take what he had taught me I had to learn from that. And then I had to use my own giftedness or my talents, my personality, and try to move those forward. And, I'll say this to you, and as you know, none of this happens on your level or my level unless you have the support of your board and your membership. And, as of last week, we are at 100% dual membership in North Carolina. So,
That's incredible.
To move from 2016, where we had no membership and we were, either or, if you chose which one you wanted to go, to now be in the situation we have 427 members. I'm extremely pleased with that. And again, that's a buy-in, a seed that Jerry planted, and then something we nurtured and moved forward with. So I've been very pleased to be blessed and pleased to be able to say that. And then, we've done some things too. And again, just because of my experience, and I'm sure you've done the same thing in Utah, we now have 4 at-large positions, just like we do on the national level, so that we can give more people an opportunity to seat at that table, so we can figure out exactly what we're doing. So we have
3 of them in Utah. So you're exactly correct.
Yeah. So I mean, for anybody that's listening to this, that's what you're looking at. Surround yourself, get some people there, and let's not only let's take all the good ideas and figure out what the best idea is from that. And that's what our challenge continues to be. And that was something that Jerry was always about.
Well, allow me to add an anecdotal story to what you talked about, Jerry, earlier. So I believe it was 2001 in Orlando when the 7 people got together. I believe I was at that table, and Walter, I think Buck, Alan Milanda, all the big dogs, and of course little me in there. But I think the first NED conference really was when Frank Kowaleski was there. We met in the summer of 2002 in Indianapolis. But the first conference that was ever held in a state was the one held in North Carolina in 2003 at the state office there. And that was an incredible experience. And of course, we talked about this earlier. Jerry came to me and said, "Now, Hutch, we need you to get you to run for the chair of the NEDC." I said, "No, Jerry, that's, you guys with the bigger states and all that." He says, "No, now, Hutch, we need you." And of course, I couldn't say no to Jerry. And, the next thing you know, I'm in as the chair elect. And then, of course, I spent my time there. And of course, now, if Jerry could see that vision, I think there was maybe 11 of us at that first conference in Indianapolis in the summer. And I expect we'll have close to 37, 38 states there in Seattle. I mean, so that's incredible. So I would just
think about that. When you think about that, think about the just getting the seat at the table with the UIAAA. Not only we're going to a group, but we're also going to petition or have a discussion about getting a seat there in that affiliate position. And then look what's happened since then is a number of people have been in, have that opportunity, that turn to share and then take those ideas back to their states.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, let's have you share with our audience your observations about the recent NIAAA conference. I say recent, of course, it's been a half a year now by the time this airs. But talk about that special time in Denver and talk about how it was extra special, seeing as even though we loved the Tampa conference, the Zoom was not quite the same as being in person. So let's have your observations about that conference.
Yeah. So again, as you know, this world pandemic we've all been going through for the last couple of years, and yet we had almost, I think the last total I heard was a little bit around, just a little bit south of 2,000, 1980, I think was the last number I heard, Mark. So that gives us an indication. I think it's one of the 5th or 6th largest yet. And we're still dealing with that, in our state. So a lot of people will look forward, as I said, that's the highlight of the year for us that are involved on the national level. And then once you come, as I said, the spouses and the athletic directors, the administrators, it's, the wives start getting together about a month or so beforehand, and they start planning things. And then, like I said, networking with the vendors, all of the workshops. I forgot the total number of workshops. I think it was like 40 some workshops. I think this year we're going to offer 52 LTI courses. I think different courses. We're offering 4 sessions. with 13 courses being offered each of those 4 opportunities. So I just think it's the people getting together. Like I said, the energy just goes up, as you know that. I mean, it's just, you get into a room and as soon as people start walking in, the volume goes up and people are excited just to reconnect with people. So Nashville is a wonderful place for anybody here. If you've not been there yet, come for the information, but you will come back because of the connection piece, the networking, and the relationship building that goes along with it. And I think, and again, it would be something that'll be highlight, and you'll start circling those every year. When you get those dates, you will save the dates and you will look forward to the dates.
Appreciate that. I have a funny story about Nashville I'll throw in. My very first conference was Nashville back in '97. And I tell this story because I had to get to the CAA test administrator meeting the next morning. So I spent 25 minutes walking around, finding where it was, finding my way back to my room so I could get there on time in the morning. So I get there in plenty of time, and it's like 15 minutes. I'm at the meeting's over. I meet so many new people, and of course, I'm just brand new at the national conference. And this fellow, I can't even remember where he was from. He says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm heading back to your room." He says, "Where are your room?" And I told him, I started walking away. He says, "Why are you going that way?" I said, "Well, that's the way you get there." He said, "Oh, no, come this way. You can get there in about 3 minutes." And so I think I left Nashville that first time. We've been back since, but I think I was still lost. So I'm hoping everyone has better directional sense than I had the first time I was there. But yeah, Nashville is going to be incredible. And I wanted to take a moment and thank you and Jerry and Rusty, because I treasure that honorary membership I have in the NCADA. I say that because I ran across a picture of the 4 of us, and Rhonda was there, and Jerry's spouse was there. Everybody was there. We had that picture. It was one of the president's receptions. So that's incredible. So let's have you talk for a moment about your 2 kids. You mentioned your boys in photography. Talk for a second about your daughter before we wrap this up.
Yeah, let me, if you don't mind, let me regress just a little bit with something you just said, because there was something you brought up, and you talked about your first conference going to, and you were already involved in committees and certification. Yeah. So again, I'm gonna challenge everybody here. Don't just come, engage. Don't just come, volunteer. How do I get involved? How can I get more involved? Come to the workshops. Ask some questions. Ask people. Walk up to the help desk and say, "Hey, what can I do? How can I facilitate a session? Can I introduce someone? Can I join a committee?" I mean, you and I both know. I mean, it is unbelievable. Like I said, I just want to challenge anybody here. If this is the first time you're hearing this, I can tell you will not be disappointed. So let me talk a little bit about my kids. As I said, my wife, we met in 1975. We got married in 80. She did a wonderful job at raising 2 phenomenal kids. Where I was spending from 91 on as an athletic director, as we all know, we go out and we help raise everybody else's kids. And fortunately for us, every person that's good in a people business has got somebody behind them. It's very good in people business. And she did a fantastic job raising 2 great kids. Todd is will be 40 tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 22nd. So I'm excited about that for him. I don't feel like I should be that old, but he's in a photographer in real estate in Greensboro, works at Guilford Technical Community College, teaching photography, and does some real estate stuff, and tapped us here in Wilmington, working for Megacore Logistics. So both of them sort of gym rats growing up, and both of them, neither one of them are sort of in athletics any longer. So I'm just really pleased at that. But the skill sets that they learned, the life lessons they learned, I think have boded well for them. And I got to give Rhonda all the credit for that. She did a phenomenal job while I was working with everybody else's kids to prepare them for that. So as we look at, one of the last things you mentioned to me was one of the favorite part of the job. And then I just think, again, as we go back and we look at this job, obviously it's the relationship piece. It's the seed planting. It's the vision casting, and as Jeremy Boone would tell us, it's the value engineering. When we can pitch an idea to value, and it turns into an action, and that actually becomes a habit, that's when we know we're really making a difference. And I know I was Jake. We had Jake come to our state conference, and he talked about his toolbox and all those things, different things that people need. But being a selfless servant, serving others first, you don't ever have to worry about your days being made anymore in this business. If you serve everybody else, you don't have to worry about that. But most importantly is creating that relationship, because they won't remember anything. They won't really talk about a ring ceremony. They'll talk about a game getting to that. It'll be a bus ride back that the kids talk about. And I think that's, to me, that's something that I think we all need to take away from this and understand is this, and as I said earlier, you start talking about awards and you start talking about colleague recognition, all of it pales in comparison to the fact that this networking piece that we have, that we're all in this thing together. And I think that's just a wonderful thing about this business and this group and this organization.
So very well said. Let me finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being, you've got two suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, and they need to follow these two suggestions in order to be a success. What would those two suggestions be?
The first one would be, again, get a good mentor. Find somebody who you can connect with, not necessarily somebody who's been where you've been, but more importantly, somebody that cares about you and is willing to share their reflective experiences. I tell people all the time is, and Randy Posh said this, and you've heard me say this, Mark, but Randy was the person that came up with it. If experience is what you get when you don't get what you want, I have a lot to share with you. And then that's what you want. You want somebody who has gained that experience, but has the giftedness and talents similar to yours, and they can help you along that path. They can take you places. They've been where you want to go. And I think that's a huge part of that. And then more importantly, mentor someone else. Even if you're a first or second year person, find somebody else that you can pour into and you can share. And now your job, your accountability will increase immediately because of the fact that you're holding yourself accountable for your own actions to make sure you don't disappoint somebody that is being mentored by you or your mentee. Those are two things that I think. And then I mentioned these earlier, and if I gave you one more, just keep growing and learning. The only people, if you are in this business and you're not failing, you're not trying anything. It's okay to fail. And I tell my officials this all the time. It's okay to miss a call, but when repeated, it's a choice. So failure is one thing. That's the first attempt in learning. But if we repeat it, then that's a choice we made, and we didn't learn the lesson that we needed to learn. And I think that's for new ADs. And like I said, with this turnover rate that we have going on around the nation right now, I think it's as high as about 55 to 60% in some states in the first 5 years. So we're only retaining about 40% in those first 5 years. And that's something we're trying to ramp up as our mentoring program. And as you know, Mike Elson is doing a wonderful job on our new mentoring committee within IAAA. So I would ask anybody, if you're trying to get involved in this, that would be a great place to start.
Thanks, Roy. What's one question I should have asked you, Roy, that I failed to ask?
Well, I don't know if it's a question. I think the one thing I would say that I think makes me a little bit unique in this business, Mark, is very few people have ever had the opportunities that I've had. And I don't take that for granted. And when I say that, I mean, being an average, athlete coming through, having an opportunity to coach, having an opportunity to officiate at the highest level, having an opportunity to be in administration, and work with hiring coaches, leading coaches, preparing coaches, and then more importantly, teaching tomorrow's leaders and our student athletes. And then the last one now is being a regional supervisor of officials and being over the officials and now giving something back and teaching them. And with that, I think it's been just a tremendous opportunity for me. And I'm so blessed by so many people who gave me that one opportunity. Somebody said, Jimmy Grimsey said, start officiating. You want to stay involved in the game, start officiating. And then Dick Knox did the same thing. I mean, he made me a clinic leader, and put me on a platform and let me do something there. So I just challenge anybody, if you have a passion for something right now, find a way to figure out first what your passion is, and then find a way to get paid to do it. And if you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So that's what I get. That would be, if I gave you something to summarize our call tonight, that's what I would say. I've done all of those except for being an athlete. I got paid a little bit of money, but I got paid enough to make a living. And I hope that I made a difference.
Well, thank you. That's so very well said. That wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest today has been Roy Turner, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and Executive Director for the North Carolina Athletic Directors Association. Thank you so much for being on the program today, Roy.
Thank you, Mark. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for all you continue to do.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.